Fathers of Reddit. What is the best way you have messed with a daughter's boyfriend when meeting him? Story 1. The first thing my ex's dad said to me was, "You can sleep in my daughter's bed tonight." And I replied, "Thanks, you too," because I was too nervous. Story 2. I wasn't the father, I was the boyfriend. I wanted to take my girlfriend out to see a movie, but she said that I had to meet her dad first. Her dad runs the local farmer's market, so I had to stop by that morning. Luckily, it was winding down because after an awkward hello, he put his hand on my shoulder and led me around and introduced me to everyone at all the stands. Now, for an introvert as myself, this would have been bad enough, but no, as he was introducing me to everyone, he used random female names for me. "Hi there, so-and-so. This here is Stephanie, and he's taking my daughter on her first date. Hey guys, meet Martha. He's taking my daughter out." It was kind of funny afterwards. Story 3. A.M. The daughter, dad, and his best friend dressed up in Speedos, mowed the lawn, BBQD, held hands, sang horribly off-key together, and nicknamed the poor Solma Big Mac. He stopped hanging out with me after that. Dad and his best friend still do weird like this together, and they are my favorite people. Story 4. Well, when he came over, I got my shotgun out. And actually, I shook his hand and said, "Pleased to meet you," because I'm not an insecure fuckhead who thinks of his daughters as property. Story 5. The first time I met my girlfriend's father, he picked us both up and was driving us to his house so we could stay the weekend. After a few minutes of driving, he told us he had to make a stop on the way there. He pulled up outside a house that looked like there was some work being done on it, and one of the guys came up to the car and said hello. My girlfriend's dad handed over this fat envelope of cash to the guy, and the guy gave him a clear blue plastic bag full of this white powder, which my girlfriend's dad threw in the back with us. At this point, I'm pretty freaked out because I'm fairly convinced that my girlfriend's dad just paid a load of money for a bag full of cocaine, but I try to act cool. My girlfriend's dad is like, "I can trust you not to say anything, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure, because I don't want to get killed or something." So about 15 minutes later into the journey, my girlfriend just bursts out laughing, and they tell me it was all just a prank. My girlfriend's dad owned the property being worked on and had to pay the workers for it, and had staged that the worker was going to give him a big bag of washing powder to freak me out. It was a pretty hilarious and harmless prank, and we laugh about it now. He's a cool guy. Story 6. Not the dad, but the boyf. He challenged me to a game of Monopoly under the impression that he was an incredible player and kept giving me drinks, kept acting like I needed to prove my worth through the game. To his credit, he did beat the rest of his family. By the end, I was a drunken owner of hotels on almost every street, all the stations and utilities. He respected my brutal corporate efficiency that day. Story 7. Beat him up in Battlefield and a few other video games. I'm almost 50 and have been a gamer since my early teens. I have more experience with games than he has. Story 8. A mate was arrested for drug possession by his girlfriend's police officer father. He was going to be introduced to the family that weekend anyway. Would have loved to have been a fly on the wall that evening. Story 9. This wasn't my dad, but my brother. I brought my home for a week over the summer. We are in college and live in separate states when not at school, and I was very excited for him to meet my family. I had already met his, and they were pretty cool. My parents were very nice and normal to him, but when we sat down for dinner that night, my brother, who is 2 years younger than me, came downstairs, chatted normally for a bit, then said, "Wait here." He runs up to his room and comes back down about 5 minutes later with a stack of papers and a pen, and sets it down in front of me. It's a quiz. It was a quiz, a literal quiz that he had typed out. He made him put his name and the date and everything. The questions were divided into 3 categories: sports, music, and movies. They were all things my brother considered vital for me to know if he ever wanted to truly belong to my family. Being the cool guy that he is, took it all in stride and only got 2 wrong on the whole 30-question quiz, with no preparation or studying at all. My family was suitably impressed, and he's still around a year and a half later. Story 10 was the boyfriend. Walked into the cleaning the guns gag. He asked, "What are your intentions with my daughter?" And without missing a beat, because I sometimes lack a filter, I replied, "Depends. What do you think I can get away with?" Her mother laughed so hard she dropped the glass and broke it. Story 11. The first time I met my ex's dad. He had just had surgery. I think I was 15 at the time. And while I was waiting for her, he asked me if I would go into the study and put on some music and make him a drink. I got him a single Jameson with 1 ice cube because that's what my Irish family members drank. And I knew he was a Hibernian, and I put on a Fleetwood Mac record because he had an awesome player setup. That was him testing me, apparently. He told me later that I passed, because I didn't just plug my phone into their auxiliary cord and grab him a beer. I hung out with him once way later on after his daughter and I had broken up, and he ordered me a Jameson with a single ice cube on his way out of the bar. Story 12. My papa greeted my aunt's boyfriend with a single gunshot out the front door, into the old gutted truck about 20 yards from the main driveway. He still fires off a greeting shot when they come in from out of town. 17 years later, Ed a pawpaw is a grandfather if your country, as my pawpaw is a half Japanese, half Native American former U.S. Marine, sheriff, and EMT, current Etsy scarf and shawl shop owner. My uncle is Desi. Story 13 boyfriend now husband. Came over to meet her extended family for Thanksgiving. Sat down next to her uncle. He looks over at me and says, "I'm gay, and stares at me. I replied back with me too and moved closer to him, practically sat on his lap. I like this guy. Been married to her for 2 years and been together for 8 years now. Her family is hilarious." Story 14, I had a boyfriend named Nelson. My dad took great pleasure in doing Nelson's laugh from The Simpsons whenever my boyfriend came over. We didn't last long, lol. Story 15, no matter what the boy's name, is shake his hand politely and say it's great to see you again, Jared. Note this has not been tested with a boy actually named Jared yet. Story 16, my dad is very good at deadpanning. Upon meeting my boyfriend, Dad told him that he was too tall, he's almost 7 feet. He wasn't sure if my dad was messing with him or was actually serious. I had to explain later that a good portion of what Dad says should be taken with a grain of salt. Story 17, my dad has told every single one of guys I've brought home, even if they were just friends, that he's not afraid to go back to jail. My dad has never been to jail. Story 18, not a daughter, but whenever I brought boys home, my dad would give him one of those little Christian comic books on the evils of homosexuality called The Gay Blade. Story 19, I have one my dad did. I had the first boyfriend come over, I was 14 for Halloween, and my dad, a butcher, was unwrapping bones for our 3 dogs as a treat. I walked over to my dad, who was using a knife, a great big one, to cut the shrink wrap off of them, and asked what those bones were from. My dad, looking dead in the eye, pulled a sharpening steel out of the bucket on the counter and sharpened the blade on the already sharp knife in swift movements and said, "Wad Limable's old boyfriend went sheet white and dumped me the next day. Thanks, Dad." Well, my current girlfriend told me about how her dad answered the door to her junior year homecoming date, her first boyfriend, with a shotgun on his shoulder. 5 years later, I visited her at her parents' house for the first time. I had met them briefly when they visited us at university, so I knew them a little bit. When I pulled into their driveway, she texted me to come in through the garage door and knock with a smiley face at the end. I figured her dad was going to pull the same thing on me. Turns out it was just so their dogs wouldn't freak out. She answered the door, and her dad greeted me shortly after with a warm handshake and a plethora of snacks he had made in preparation for the football games that afternoon. I felt at home pretty quickly. Story 20, brother to the sister that brought him home. My old man wrote his name on a 12-gauge shell and set on a mantle above the fireplace and said nothing. It was about halfway through dinner before he noticed it. I've never seen a face get so white so quick in all my life. They're married now. Shell is still sitting there. Story 21, I attached his genitals to a car battery with gator clips because am I up who likes to dictate my daughter's life and live vicariously through men that her. Story 22 was the boyfriend. Wanted to take GF on a date, but she said her dad had to meet me first. He was a single dad, so it's not like her mom would have been there to hold him back or anything, and dude was pretty buff. My GF goes in her room while her dad sits me down on the couch and sits across from me, not saying a word but looking straight into my eyes the whole time. 15-year-old me was pretty shaken. He finally says, "I'm going to make this short. Anything you do to my daughter, I'm going to do to you." We just held hands that day. Story 23, I am a daughter, and I do not have any funny father stories, but I do have one mom story. My house has the front door on the 2nd floor, and our front steps are large and can be intimidating. All friends were required to come inside and introduce themselves before I could get in their car and leave with them. So I had a date with a popular boy bag, and he texted me that he was there to pick me up and to come outside. I told him that he has to come meet my parents, and he did, although awkwardly and rudely. Long story short, he was incredibly disrespectful towards me, and I was back home within 30 minutes. Later that evening, my mother messaged him on Facebook, "You are the rudest boy to ever walk up the front steps to my house." Shortly after, I got a large apology text from the boy. My mother didn't tell me about the message she sent until at least 6 months later. It was awesome. Story 24, when I brought my first real boyfriend home for dinner for the first time, I forgot to mention that my dad was also home for dinner. He's a policeman and comes home for meals, so we rock up, and there's a police car in the driveway. It's normal for me, but my boyfriend's face was literally at its spelling. Story 25, daughter here. First time I bring by my hometown, we visit my parents. My mom tries to stuff him with food, while my dad excitedly describes the great deal he got on my sister's new car. My boyfriend comes to join me in the middle of this, and my dad stops, looks him dead in the eye, and excitedly says, "Want to see something cool?" He then proceeds to get on the computer and turns the screen to my boyfriend and I, We were greeted with a picture of my dad when he was 21, buff, shirtless, and flexing. I begin to cover my face in embarrassment as my dad looks excitedly at my boyfriend for a response. My boyfriend simply says, "You look good, man." Pretty sure my dad did this to embarrass me instead of mess with my boyfriend. But to put him in a pickle for a second there, my boyfriend now makes jokes about how hot my dad is just to embarrass me more. Story 26, boyfriend of a girl with 2 dads. I've yet to meet her real father, and she doesn't want me to. He's a huge that cheated on her mom, then fled across the country. Her stepdad I see on a somewhat regular basis. He's a character, that's for sure. We told our parents about our relationship about 2 to 3 weeks ago, and first thing he does is shake my hand with a grip that's way too hard for normal, then takes me aside and asks what my intentions is with his daughter. While asking this, he's gripping his hand around my neck. It should be noted I'm a big kid. I'm 6'1" and like 200 pounds. I'm not easily intimidated. At that moment, this man scared the out of me. As I was trying to muster up an answer, he drops his hand and hugs me and tells me he's messing with me and that I should have seen my face. Needless to say, she doesn't like him much either. Story 27, not a father. But my cousin has the best story about a first and last date in the late 70s. My uncle was living a post-divorce, bachelor life, and was enjoying himself immensely, dating a younger woman who from a distance or behind resembled my cousin enough that they could be mistaken for one another and if standing near each other. You might assume they were sisters. While he was dating this woman, my cousin, all of 16 at the time, was going on her first real date. Dinner, a school dance, the works. My uncle was slightly apprehensive about it, but was determined to make the best of the situation and accept the fact that his little girl was growing up. A few minutes before she was to be picked up, my uncle was struck by inspiration. He and his girlfriend were also going out to dinner that night, and he noticed that his daughter and his girlfriend were wearing the identical sweaters. So he sprung into action. He made his girlfriend give her necklace to his daughter, had them swap shoes, and put paper bags over their heads. When my cousin's date walked up, he was warmly greeted by Uncle, who ushered him into the living room and said, "We're all going out tonight. You pick your date, and he'll take the other." The kid, speechless, stammered for a bit, then pointed. My cousin went out on a very fancy dinner date with her father to a French bistro. Despite being terribly mortified, she admits that the food exceptional, and her father let her have a few glasses of wine to ease mortification. After dinner, he dropped her off at the dance and picked up his girlfriend. Let's just say neither woman was happy, and my cousin's paramour, so confused by the situation, decided that it was time to end their relationship. I aspire to achieve such heights of withery. Story 28, I was going hunting the next morning with my brother and brother-in-law, so I had several guns and boxes of ammo out. My daughter walked in with her boyfriend, introduced him, and I asked where they were going, what time they would be back, etc. And he told me. With that, I said, "Catch and tossed a bullet to him." He caught it, looked at it, looked back at me, and I said, "It moves a lot faster after midnight. Have a good one." Story 29, I was the boyfriend. My girlfriend warned me that her dad liked to be sitting in his chair, cleaning his shotgun, whenever one of the girls brought a boy over to meet the parents. She told me that the gun was a relic and had been disabled or deactivated or something. Don't remember the exact term. She said he was real proud of it and said it was a Springfield something or other, so I walked in, and there he was. I said, "Hey, a nice Springfield something or other," and asked if I could hold it. He handed it to me, and I looked at it and said, "When did you have it deactivated?" The girls, who were all watching, smiled. He wasn't amused, especially after he started a discussion about guns, and it was clear I didn't know anything about them. He eventually figured out that she warned me, and he was none too pleased at how bold I was. I just thought it was funny. That was the start of a long and rocky relationship with that man. Much to his dismay, I married his daughter. Now that I am the dad, I grill the boyfriends about what my daughter has told them about me and her mother. My being a forensic investigator is not something my daughters usually lead with, I have found, and my comments about knowing how to make it look accidental are usually met with some level of clenching. Story 30, my dad threatened to smash his windows in with a baseball bat. It was a friend from school who was obviously gay and had come to work on a project. Lord knows what hell do when I actually bring home a boyfriend. Story 31, my daughters are 2 and 4. When my oldest was born, I started working out again. I found the best inspiration on days when I'm feeling lazy is to imagine myself as some nearly mythical titan ripping the door off its hinges to greet some poor kid intent on taking my daughter on a date. So my plan is long-term, and I'll check back and let you all know how it goes. Story 32, we hosted a beautiful teenage exchange student for a year. When a boy came to take her to a dance, I looked down at him and said in roughly these words, "I am responsible for her right now, but her real father is even bigger than me, and you don't want to do anything that would off both of us." Story 33. I went to tell my new father-in-law that I was serious with his daughter and intended to marry her. He interpreted it as me asking for his permission and told me now isn't the right time, maybe in a few years. That really messed me up. Good guy. Language barrier. It all worked out in the end. Story 34. I was the boyfriend in this case. But this one has always stuck with me. Everyone knows the old dad is cleaning his gun cliché. Well, this is a slightly different variation of that. He was polishing a sledgehammer. It turned out he was actively just screwing with me and didn't care, but I had to give him credit for creativity and for leaving me an absolute loss when I walked into their living room and saw the gleam from the shiny hammer. Story 35. I was greeted once by a dad, trying to look like he was sharpening a saw on a pole like you use for cutting branches, was more concerned than intimidated. Story 36. ITT. People who don't realize that fathers don't do this because they think of their daughters as objects, but because this is a rite of passage for young men, and it is the responsibility of elder males to scare the out of boyfriends for funsies. Story 37. Probably going to get buried. And obligatory not the father. My sister's first real boyfriend was from about 3 hours away, and she brought him to the house for the first time without telling us they were coming. My father and I had no intention of messing with him. Due to some poor planning on my sister's part, they show up on the Saturday before the start of hunting season. At the time, my father and I were sighting in the hunting rifles up the field at around 500 yards, completely unintentional, but if I had been in his shoes, I would have myself, edit spelling. Story 38. I was the boyfriend. First time meeting her family. Her mother says I think I saw their car and leaves the room. He looks at his daughter and asks, did you prepare him? She looks at me with a big WTF face. He gets 3 shots glasses, gives all 3 of us a shot of Genever. We all drank it. The doorbell rings. He looks at me and says, well, I'm going to need this, and gives us all 3 another shot. They people who came that night were lovely. No need to take shots, and never saw him drinking after that. Story 39. My dad always calls my boyfriend's watch his face until he gains respect for the guy. My current boyfriend just recently got his name privilege, which has happened I think twice. Story 40. I call this the worst first date experience thanks to my dad. I had moved to a new school in the 3rd grade and fell in elementary love with a boy wearing those pants that unzip to reveal shorter pants or shorts. It was not until the 5th grade, after endless diary entries and tampered with MASH outcomes, that my crush finally asked me out on a date. My dad immediately said no, and I sobbed and sobbed, until my mother talked my dad into letting me go. The only problem was he was coming too. I decided not to tell my crush that my father would be attending the date with us, but instead pretended to be just as confused as he was that an older man was sitting directly behind us during the movie. The movie was just married. My poor crush tried to put his arm around me, and I felt my face flush as a voice from behind us said, you want to keep that arm? My father laughs to this day about how far we were leaning away from each other after that, and is very pleased with himself that he ended any affectionate advances. What my dad doesn't know is that we kissed every recess after that date until our terribly dramatic breakup on the soccer field. Story 41. And the boyfriend in this situation was at my GF's house. Her dad saw me, walked up to me, and said, who the are you? And then proceeded to follow me around, practically touch my face with his until I left. Fortunately, he was electronically tagged and couldn't follow me out of the house. Just FYI, he was tagged for sticking up for kids being beaten up by other men. Edit. So to give a bit more context to this, I went to my GF's house to pick her up. She wasn't ready, so I went inside. While we were on our way out, he made his comment and then followed me out the house, obviously looking me up and down while remaining uncomfortably close. This possibly lasted about 20 seconds. This wasn't an aggressive thing. He purely did it to make me feel awkward and on the spot. I think he wanted to see what type of guy I was, how I would react to that sort of confrontation, etc. According to my GF, her ex-BFs resembled mouthy kids. Perhaps her dad was testing my level of maturity. I can't say for sure. Never asked him about it. Hope this explains things a little better. Story 42. My daughter has been kicking and taking names since she was 3 months old. I have no worries whatsoever that she'll be able to take care of herself when she starts stepping out with boys in the next few years. Story 43. My dad was always really nice to the guys I've dated. He shakes their hands and just gets to know them like a person. He's always said to me, I don't care who you date, as long as they treat you well and you're happy. I love my dad for not treating me like a possession. Story 44. Not a dad, but I'm a daughter. I had a large backyard growing up, and my dad and brother set up hay barrels and archery targets. When my high school boyfriend came over for dinner one night, my mom casually mentioned he looks around out back. To his surprise, S. large picture of his face was printed and placed over the target, and there were arrows stuck all over the pictures of him. My whole family was in on it. They're all goof, and I thought it was funny. Boyfriend didn't. His mom ended up calling my mom and complaining that it was mean. We broke up shortly after that. Story 45, my sister's dad, not mine, thought it would be hilarious when she brought her first home to hit on him. So you have this large, imposing black guy looking at a 15-year-old white boy who thinks Eminem is the best way to style your life and falls short several $1,000,000. And he's making googly eyes at him, rubbing his thigh. And one point he smacked him on the butt and says, To his credit, this stuck with my sister for a couple more years. Story 46, I made up a game. I call them by a different name every time I address them. Goal is to see how many names I can call them before they correct me. Record is 27 in one visit. Story 47, when my dad was dating my mom, my grandfather would always call my dad by the wrong day name until the wedding night. Now he and I do that to my cousin's boyfriend, except he doesn't know the story. Story 48, I was the daughter, and I was sitting in my kitchen when Dad came home from playing volleyball. After talking a few minutes, without any warning, Dad dropped his pants. Thankfully, he had gym shorts on underneath. I told this story at Dad's funeral, and it got lots of laughs. I have a little girl in pre-K, but there's this kid who always messes with her, and I think he has a crush on her. He's a little though, pulls hair, takes toys, etc., and apparently he hates chocolate-flavored things. So at baby girl's birthday, he was invited, and I made sure we had chocolate everything. Chocolate cake, chocolate icing, chocolate ice cream. And to top it off, chocolate kisses in the goodie bags. My kid loved chocolate, so it is justified, but I took perverse satisfaction in with this little. Story 49, I've been on the boyfriend end of this a couple of times. The fathers that did this seem to really want to know about our life, and even seem to encourage it. Kind of creepy. Couple examples, the father did the gun cleaning bit and told me he could shoot a flea off of a running dog from 100 yards out. I was taking her out one night, and he told her to change from her black pants to a short skirt, so I could see her legs better. She gave me head in the car on the way to the date and told me how she wanted a job when she turns 18. Her dad also bought her 3 sports cars. Story 50, I'm a brother. A 19-year-old dude picked up my 16-year-old sister. Under the guise of just hanging out, he tried to screw her without consent, and she had to fight him off. After she texted me and told me what happened, I had him arrested for rape. He's currently in prison. Story 51, my sensei would have guys who wanted to date his daughter come to a karate class with us first. Not so he could see that we could kick his or something. I mean, any adult can beat up a child for the most part regardless of training, but you can tell a lot about a guy on how he work out. Does he try hard? Does he make eye contact? Is he polite? Those sorts of things. Only one kid actually went through with it. And he was a good dude, worked out hard, brought a friend with him, and we all thought he was a nice kid. As a result, his daughter wanted nothing to do with him. Story 52, daughter here. My dad is not a super tall man, but he is most definitely a bear. I think of him as a teddy bear, but when the boyfriend comes over for the first time, he's gone grizzly. I make introductions. Boyfriend puts out his hand, dad takes it, grips it, does a Bruce Lee style size double, and lets out this rumbling growl from the depths of his chest like some mythical beast. You could feel that growl reverberate all through you. He gave one solid shake and says, nice to meet the fella taking my baby girl out. Keep her safe. Story 53, not a father. But I remember my sister's senior prom night. I was about 10 at the time and was down in the basement playing on the computer. My dad was at the adjacent workbench cleaning various firearms. Neither of us cared to be involved in the preparing for prom drama. My mom calls him up when the prom date arrives. He's not particularly interested in being involved and slowly walks to the doors, turns around, grabs the .45 he was just cleaning, and casually sticks it in his back pocket. Sister was amused. Prom date was terrified. Story 54, not me, but something my granddad did to guys my mom would bring home. He would get them horrifically drunk on his homebrew beer. You could literally clean submarines with that. Wait for them to say something stupid and drunk, and use that as an excuse to throw them out, thus preventing any chance at teenage pregnancy on my mom's part. Story 55, not a father, but my cousin, when meeting his future parents-in-law for the first time, was forced to tiptoe around the house while his father-in-law shushed him before revealing that his girlfriend, now wife, was actually awake, and he was just messing with him. Story 56, as a father to a 4-year-old girl. I'm just commenting here to save the thread for future ideas. I've got my own, but hearing from others is always nice. Story 57, either y'all are too sensitive about a lot of these, or I just have a good sense of humor. Most of these sound hilarious, and I would have laughed at. It's meant as a joke, and I feel bad for any guy that doesn't take it as such. No dad is going to be shooting anyone. They aren't trying to instill the fear of God. They're just with a new guy. Story 58, my girlfriend's dad and Uncle brewed moonshine. They took me to their still one day, and we took shots. The conversation started turning toward controversial subjects, and I realized that they weren't taking shots. And I was about 4 deep. I steer course and try not to act as drunk as I was. The 3 of us get along swimmingly to this day. It was a fun time. I'd do it again. Story 59, when my sister went to prom, beforehand, when her date asked for the corsage to put on, my dad handed him the top of a pineapple that he had cut off. Story 60, not a dad, but a brother to a younger sister. The first boyfriend she brought home was for a night we were going to set off some 5th of November fireworks. My brother and I are big airsofters, so during the display, whilst everyone was looking up, we each pull out a flashbang grenade, not real ones, the kind you get at Paint Ballersoft, and roll them next to this kid, and he craps himself. Everyone thought it was hilarious except him. He never came around again, and they broke up a few weeks later. My sister wasn't pissed. She thought the situation was great. Story 61, I was the boyfriend. Her dad challenged me to a game of chess, and lost horribly. Afterwards, he took me to the man cave and proceeded to try to beat me at pool and video games. He lost terribly. I kind of felt bad afterwards, but at the time it felt good. My then girlfriend could only laugh at us being competitive and trying to beat each other in games. I'm still the ex-boyfriend he would rather her date, despite her. I'm not talking, but once every 2 years. Story 62, not a dad, but my ex's dad got to me in a horribly weird way. To tell this story, I gotta ramble a little, so forgive me if it's a tad bit long. So junior year of high school, I meet this senior, transferred from another school in town, gorgeous, and for some reason into me. Even better, her parents were in the mindset of she's going to be messing around anyways. We can either let that happen here as long as they aren't blatant about it. That way, if it becomes no consenting, then we can step in. I say parents, but I really mean the mom. The dad didn't like it, but he was far from the dominant one in the relationship in the sense that she made those decisions. So he had just gone with it, but after a few months, I had basically begun living there. The mom loved having me around because I'm tall and able to do things around the house. So she had told my girlfriend she didn't need to sneak me in the window to let me sleep there. That's what seemed to get to him. It was now obvious to him how intimate we were. So he would get in my head. He started doing his reading in a chair just outside the hall to her room. This did 2 things. The first being when she wanted he was on the other side of the wall, and that made me more uncomfortable than her for some reason. The second was that every time I came out to get me and her water or food, he was there to start conversation. Something small, like about a test I had recently or something. On prom night, I hadn't brought spare clothes and didn't want to have to wear the tux the next day. So I decided to walk home. It was a few miles, but I enjoy walking and did that walk all the time. I left at 3 a.m., disheveled tux and cold. No one seemed to be awake. I walked about 10 minutes, so I was pretty far from the house when I see a car coming towards me. All I could think was son of one of her parents woke up from the door and wants to give me a ride, which happened before, and I hated it. It was so awkward. Plus, it's 3 a.m. I don't want to keep them up too. Sure enough, it's him. That was the most silent car ride of my life. He didn't say a word other than get in. I think he wanted to be like a gangster movie, but he was a short, chubby guy in a Prius. That being said, I love that family, me and her split, and they still ended up finding out I was in a kid's play and bringing my ex's little brother and sister for support. They invited me over and stayed in touch more than me and her did now that I think about it. Great people. Ed, I'm about to make a lot of them. I was tired as in high when I wrote this, and I messed up a lot. Correction 1. I was in a play for children that her parents brought the kids to, not in a play with them. Correction 2, multiple phone mess-ups where I typed you instead of I. And correction 3, I'm an idiot. And I started a list by saying this did 2 things A, and then continued the list by saying and the second thing. Story 63, a female friend. Her boyfriend was picking her up for the first time. Her father was a judo instructor, quite a big guy. Anyways, she answers the door, asks the boyfriend to step inside and wait for her. Now, right there in the living room is her father and her brother discussing various judo techniques. At the very moment the boyfriend-to-be turns around and sees them for the first time, the father throws the brother across the room, then stands up, advances on the boyfriend, looks down at him, then extends a hand, gives a big smile, and says, "Hi, I'm XX's dad. Pleased to meet you." She described the date that evening as being quite subdued, but the boyfriend did stick around for some time.